soft, murky underside of amazing worlds, where fantasy takes a turn for the dark, the uncomfortable, and the outright horrific. You are forewarned. Continue only at your own risk, for the usual goblins, dragons, and kings give way to the nightmares you may never wake from, where even your loved ones may turn out to be not who you expected. Welcome, traveler, to Amazing Horror Tales. Today, I bring you Arcadio and Mercedes, a tale of true love. Some might even say, undying. This tale was written in Kingston upon Thames in February of 2012, and it counts with the invaluable editing help of Payview. Please make sure to check his channel in the link in the description below. All mistakes remain the sole responsibility of yours truly, author of this tale. And now, without further ado, I bring you Arcadio and Mercedes. Arcadio and Mercedes had endured many sufferings and hardships together. From the years in which Arcadio had courted Mercedes on Sundays after church, just like the traditions of the time dictated, walking together alongside the creek that runs through the orchards under the attentive eyes of Mercedes' mother and aunts, to the evenings in which they warmed their wearied bones under the last sun rays of the autumn sun. Theirs had been a courting equal to so many others in the village, innocent, chaste, and brief. They got married in the church, as it could not be any other way in those times. It was Father Amancio who married them, the same priest that had christened them in the same church 23 and 18 years back. All the village was invited to the wedding, as it was tradition. With the passage of time, both Arcadio and Mercedes laughed at the memory of her mother's visit early in the morning after the wedding night. They were young and they loved each other. No one opposed their marriage, and neither of them remembered happier days in their lives than when Mercedes gave birth to their children, Merceditas first and Antonio barely a year later. They raised them in the farmhouse that Arcadio had inherited from his parents until both grew up and embarked on their trip of living their lives far away from the village. Merceditas was now known as Merche, and she ran a hairdresser's and beauty parlor in the capital, and Antonio had long migrated to France. Together they had shared back pains and sunrises pushing the plough. Together they had shared sunsets by the fire, where they roasted potatoes over the embers in the cold winter nights, where the only way to feel warm was to place a brazier under the bed and sleep hugging each other. Seasons passed and years passed, and little by little the village became a shadow of what it used to be. The old people died and the young left, just as Merche and Antonio had done. Now there were only a few scattered farmhouses left here and there. Visits from neighbors, though always welcome, were sporadic as everyone was busy with their own labor. Besides, old age ailments had also started to make their appearance. Whenever these visits happened, they became long talks that lasted well into the afternoon in order to catch up with the news of what each one's relatives were up to. Furthermore, a couple of extra hands was always needed for those jobs in which Arcadio and Mercedes could not make do by themselves. One night, Arcadio was abruptly woken up by one of Mercedes' coughing fits. He got scared when he turned on the oil lamp on the bedside table and saw blood on the pillow. In spite of Mercedes assuring him that she felt fine and that nothing was wrong, he could not go back to sleep again that night. Her health did not improve after a few days. Getting out of bed required a greater effort, and her coughing fits became bloodier. Arcadio knew fear. He had not known any other life in over 20 years other than his life with Mercedes, the two of them together, alone. He packed a loaf of bread and went searching for the apothecary in the village on the other side of the valleys. He walked, worried about leaving Mercedes alone, but he could not think of anything else. He had to find help. The night was beginning to settle when he arrived at the apothecary's house. He knocked on the door on the verge of exhaustion. They fed him dinner whilst the apothecary prepared his bag and the car. They got back to the farmhouse almost at sunrise. Arcadio waited under the lintel of his own bedroom while the apothecary examined Mercedes. He waited nervously, hat in hand, not knowing what to do or say. There was not anything anybody could do. Mercedes was going to die. From that night on, Arcadio lavished every attention he could on Mercedes. He fed her the meals that he clumsily prepared. Once a week, he washed her and healed the sores that appeared due to her constant state of prostration. The farmhouse slowly fell into a progressive state of abandonment. The weeds grew on what had once been crops. A few roof tiles fell one stormy night, and Arcadio could not find the strength or the will to fix them. The fields barely produced enough to live on. He wrote a letter to Merceditas and Antonio, telling them the grave news. He hoped they could say goodbye to the mother on time. Visits had ceased completely, save for the apothecary, who just stopped by to drop the medicines that would alleviate Mercedes' pain when he did the rounds of the farmhouses. One day, Mercedes stopped eating, although Arcadio continued looking after her every day, changing her clothes and washing her, whilst seeing her shrink slowly into her bare bones. He talked to her, not knowing if she listened. He spoke to her about the jobs he had done on the fields, what the weather was like, and the size of the garlic head he had harvested. He continued working on the fields for hours every day, until one day when, pushing the plough, felt a strong pain in the chest that cut his breath. With one knee sunk on the ground, he waited until he could breathe again. He felt exhausted. After tying up the donkey to the stable, he went to lie down next to Mercedes for a rest. He would make some soup for dinner once he felt better. And so did the apothecary find them the day Arcadio did not welcome him at the door, just like every day he was meant to visit. Antonio and Merche were notified of the death of their parents just a couple of days later. Arcadio had died of a heart attack. The death of Arcadio and Mercedes had not been too different from the deaths that took place in the farmhouses far from the towns. It was not uncommon for certain types of deaths to go unnoticed for a few days. The surprising fact about this one, the point that was talked about in whispers in the farmhouses of the area, but never in the presence of Merche or Antonio, was that, according to the coroner's autopsy, Mercedes' death was dated 3 months prior to Arcadio's.